This is Sig from FFXIV and Things, and this is How to MMORPG Refresher number 2. Today we're going to be just going over a little bit more of the information that we've gone over so far, or that we've talked about so far. Today we're going to focus on characters, classes, and roles. We'll do another video that goes a little more in depth on roles, but we'll just give a brief description of them in this video. So today we're going to talk about characters, and the different types of classes and the different roles that those classes play within the game. Generally in MMORPGs, you're going to control in the game one character. You're going to create one character, and that character is how you're going to interact with the game and going to decide what you're going to do. You'll usually be able to pick a race, like you can see here. Our bud Sig is a Lalafell. He's a short person, little person in the realm of FFXIV or Final Fantasy XIV, which would be similar to like dwarves and gnomes and things like that in other games, other fantasy games. But there are usually quite a few classes to choose from. You usually have your standard elves and orcs, humans, all different kinds, and then it just kind of progresses from there. Like in Final Fantasy XIV, here we've got a Makote, or a cat person. He's got he's got a tail going on, he's got ears, pretty cool looking dude, whatever, let's see if we can find anybody else. Oh, here's another cat person. Cat people are actually pretty popular in Final Fantasy XIV. Generally, characters are choosing your race. The race of your character isn't really going to affect your gameplay very much. As far as, well, I won't say that, but isn't really going to affect how well you can progress through the game. Generally, all characters or all races are pretty much on equal footing. One race is not necessarily better than the other. Some may be better in different aspects. But not enough to make one race the race to go with. And that's going to depend, though, on, of course, your play style. For example, in Final Fantasy XIV, each race starts with a base stat pool, and they're going to differ based on each race. And each, of course, we'll talk about stats later on, but stats are going to affect, how good you are at certain things. So if you really want to be the best wizard or the best black mage in Final Fantasy XIV, if you want to be the best black mage that you possibly can be, you're going to want to choose a race that has good starting stats in things that are black mages use, that are good for black mages. But generally, don't worry about it. I know that in World of Warcraft, races have different racial abilities, and each one is different and provides a different thing. So depending on what you're doing, it may be a good idea. If you want to be the best of the best, especially if you want to have that advantage, it may be a good idea to go with a particular race. But in general, if you just want to progress the game, you just want to play the game, you're not worried about optimization and things like that, pick whatever race you like, whatever race it looks cool to you and represents what you think you want to be in the game, or how you want to represent your character in the game. And then, of course, as you're creating your character, you'll be able to choose generally a lot of different customizations, such as hairstyle, eye color, things like that. And those again aren't going to affect your gameplay as far as progressing through the game. It's just going to affect what you look like. So you can just make them look whatever you want. You want pink hair, do pink hair. You know what I mean? Whatever you want to do. It doesn't really matter. So after you finished finalizing your character, I guess we're really talking about character creation, the character creation process here. But after you've done, you're done finalizing, your character's appearance and your race. It's definitely going to be a good idea to look over everything and make sure it is how you want it to be, because generally you're not really going to be able to change that stuff very easily, or if you can, you might have to pay for it, such as changing your race. I know in Final Fantasy XIV you do have to buy a file of Fantasia to actually be able to, with real money, in order to actually change your character's race, facial appearance, and things like that. Cosmetic things like hair and face paint and maybe things like that you might be able to change in the game. They're usually going to offer some kind of barber service or something like that, so you can change your tattoos and change your hair color and your hairstyle. But as far as like changing your actual character's, his facial structure and things like that, generally you're going to have to shell some money out for that or start a new character. So definitely go over and make sure that that's what you want to do. And typically after that, you're going to choose your class. And in MMORPGs, there's generally quite a few classes, or a good number of classes to choose from. Usually you're going to have your warriors, and so you got your sword and shield people, your two-handed weapon users, such as great swords and things like that. You're going to have some kind of speed character, some kind of sneaky character, or some kind of sneaky class. You're going to have your magic classes. You're going to have your priests and things like that. You're just going to have a wide variety of things to play, and this will affect your gameplay for sure, which kind of lets us switch into what we're going to talk about next, which is roles. Each class typically is going to have a role that they play as far as combat classes are going to have a role that they play in combat, a specific thing that they're going to do. For example, we'll talk about those roles. Generally, there are 3 types of roles. And there's sometimes will be a 4th one, but we will talk about that last. The first role we're going to talk about is going to be tanks. And what tanks do if as a tank, if you choose a class that's a tank that tanks. What a tank does, or what tanking is, it's what you'll I'm a little tongue-tied here. What a tank does is they gather up all the enemies and keep the enemies focused on them. Generally, tanks have a lot of defense, so they can take a lot of damage, whereas other classes typically are pretty squishy, as we say, or have low defenses. So in content and in content like dungeons and things like that, most of the monsters are going to do a lot more damage than they will out in the open world like we see here. Right now we're just out in the open world, but if we were in a dungeon or something like that, generally the monsters, or raid, generally the monsters are going to do a lot more damage. Just base damage are going to do a lot more, so you're going to need a tank. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to, if you were to go and attack a monster, as another role. Generally, you're only going to be able to take a couple hits before you die. So you need tanks, and so that's what tanks do. Is they run in and they gather up all the enemies. They keep them focused on them, on the tank, using specific abilities that tools that the tanks are given to do that, and they just keep the enemies from attacking the other players. And we're going to go a little bit into more specifically what tanking and how to tank does in the next episode. But for right now, we're going to leave it there. The next role is going to be that we're going to talk about is DPS, or damage per second roles. DPS classes are just what they sound like. Their job is to do damage, and to do as much damage as they can, as fast as they can, and as efficiently and effectively as they can. So that's if you choose DPS class, that's pretty much what you got to do. You know what I mean? You're just gonna run in there, and you're gonna let the tank gather up all the enemies, and you're gonna make sure that he's got their attention, and then you're just gonna start wailing on him with whatever it is that you choose, either fists or swords or bows and arrows, guns, magic, fireballs, whatever you wanna play. That's what you're gonna do. You're just gonna run in there. You're just gonna start blasting stuff. And typically there's gonna be with all the classes, but especially with DPS classes, there's gonna be a specific sequence in which you're generally going to want to use your abilities, your attacks, and then you'll have abilities that you'll want to use at specific times as well, such as things that make you do more damage or increase your critical chance or things like that. And you're going to want to know when to use them. So your responsibility as a DPS is really and really as any role, but definitely especially as a DPS, is really know your class, know what your abilities do. Know when to use them and what sequence to use them in, and doing it as effectively as you can. A lot of games nowadays, especially, will have people will have what they call parsers. Now, in Final Fantasy XIV, you're not supposed to have parsers. It's actually against the terms of service. But what parsers do is they record all the numbers, and there's tons of numbers in role-playing games in general, but in MMOs for sure too. So they record all the damage. As far as for DPS, they're going to record all the damage you do, and they're going to average it into DPS, or damage per second. And once you start getting into the in-game stuff, people are really going to be looking at that, because there's going to be times where you're going to need to just do as much damage as you can. So they're going to be looking at your DPS, and they're going to be looking at how much damage you're doing per second. And if you're not doing enough, because sometimes you're going to have to, there's going to be a threshold in order to complete the dungeon. They're going to be looking at that, and they're going to say, hey man, your DPS is a little low. Let's, if they're cool, hey, let's look over your rotation real quick and see if we can't eke out a little bit more for you, because we're gonna need it. So that is your responsibility. But I will say this, out of all the roles that you can play, DPS is probably the least stressful. Tanking, for me personally, is very stressful. And healing is not as stressful, and we'll talk about the different stress levels as well at the very end. But that's it. You pick a DPS class. That's what you do. Run in there, do as much damage as you can. Just punch all the things, blow up all the things, shoot all the things. And that's really it. The next class that we'll talk about is going to be healers. And healers are basically, again, exactly what they sound like. Their job is to keep the party alive. So again, the tank is going to gather up all the enemies, and he's going to be taking a lot of damage. So he may have 3 enemies on him at one time. He may have 5, depending. And the healer's job is to make sure that everybody stays alive. But generally, if everything works out, as it should, in the way that it should, they're really going to be focused on healing the tank, especially just starting off. But that's their job, and they'll have the tools in order to do that. Generally they're going to have different ranks of heals. So you'll have, a heal that does a little bit, heals for a little bit, a heal that heals for a little bit more, and then a heal that heals for a little bit more, and then their, oh snap button, which is heal him for everything right now. And of course those abilities are going to have prerequisites and things like that. You're also going to be, as a healer, more so than any other class, you're going to be managing your resources. Generally in traditional MMOs, casters are going to be resource management heavy. So each spell that you cast is usually going to cost magic points, or MP, and you're going to have a certain pool of MP. And as you level, that pool will increase, but also as you get better, higher quality abilities, those are going to cost more MP. So definitely as a healer, since we'll just stick to that, we'll talk about that. You're going to be watching your MP. You're going to be watching how much you have, because it generally costs quite a bit to heal. And if the tank, is taking a lot of damage, you may end up, running out of MP before the monsters are dead at points in time, or, something might happen and the tank may take a little bit too much damage. But you're also going to have tools generally that are going to allow you to restore some of your MP. So you're going to want to have to know when to use those and things like that. But healing generally isn't too stressful, and it's actually a lot of fun, especially if you like micromanaging, because that's what you're really going to be doing. Is you're going to be micromanaging your resources. You're going to be looking at the party list, and if somebody gets hit, you're going to want to scroll down and pop them a heal. You know what I mean? Then go back to the tank and heal the tank. It's a lot of looking at lists and bars and things like that and pushing buttons. There's not really generally a rotation for healers. It's just, okay, right now we need a small heal, or right now we need a big heal, or we can throw, this spell on this guy to give him a little more defense or something like that maybe. But that's generally what you're going to be doing as a healer. You're going to be looking at bars and you're going to be pushing buttons. Or as my old friend KB used to say, you're going to be doing damage to the damage. That's what you do as a healer. And then the fourth class, which sometimes exists and can exist in multiple different forms, is support classes. Generally, all classes will have something that they can bring to the rest of the party as well, and not just self buffs and things like that, but something that they can do for the rest of the party. But they're generally not focused on that very much. They may have one or two things. For example, Monk has an ability called Mantra, which when activated gives anybody within the area of effect a buff that increases how much they're healed for by a certain percentage. I think it's like 15%. But that's really about the only one they have. A true support class really is going to focus on buffing or giving beneficial effects to their party members, to their friends, and generally giving debilitating effects to their enemies. So causing their enemies to have lower defense, or for a certain period of time, or attacking slower, or taking more damage, and then causing their friends to attack faster, or do more damage, or heal more, or or regenerate resources faster. I haven't really seen very many true support classes where that was their real focus. And generally, what you're going to find are if anything, are going to be hybrid classes. So classes that kind of do a little bit of both. Either they're going to heal and they're going to kind of half focus on healing, half focus on support, or half focus on damage and half focus on support. I don't generally think you're going to find a tank hybrid support class. I haven't seen one, but they may exist for sure. But for example, Final Fantasy XIV has two hybrid support classes. They're Bard and Machinist, and the role that the hybrid aspect, or the support role that they play, is they have abilities that allow characters or have people in their party, players in their party, to regenerate resources more quickly. So bards do it through songs. Just for an example, one song, the song that most bards are going to play most often, kind of is, or focus on most, is going to be Mage's Blood, which what it does is when activated, any player within earshot or within effect of the song, within the area of effect of the song, is going to regenerate their MP faster. So their MP is going to regenerate faster, which is great for healers, because in a lot of fights, healers are going to be burning through their magic points pretty quick. They're going to be using them up pretty fast, and so a bard's going to be just generally watching the healer's mana pool bar or their MP bar, and when it gets to about half or so, go ahead and pop a song, you know what I mean, and wait till their mana bar regenerates faster. Now the only thing, the stipulation is that by playing this song, it actually costs you MP for as long as the song is active. So you kind of have to watch yours too, but you generally don't have to worry about it because you don't really use that resource for anything else. But they are still also focused on damage because they are a hybrid class. They're not a full support class, so they still have to know their rotations and things like that, and know when to use what abilities and buffs, self buffs, and things like that. But that's generally what you're going to find are hybrid classes. I haven't really seen true support classes in an MMO that I can think of ever. They're generally going to be damage and support classes. But that's really about it. And I said we were going to talk about something afterwards, but I can't. Oh, stress levels, that's right. So as far as which can be the most stressful class or roles to play, I would definitely say healers or tanks, simply because a lot of the success of the party rides on you. Generally, if a tank dies, that means all the enemies he was holding at that time are gonna, they're gonna go after the other players in the party, and since they don't have a lot of defense, usually the rest of the party is going to die. So a lot of the party's success and the success of the duty is going to rely on the tank. And again, if the healer, now that's not to say that things aren't going to be happening that the other roles aren't going to have to watch out for. There's going to be a lot of things a lot of attacks that as a DPS or a healer you're also going to have to watch out for. So if the healer's not watching out, and because it gets hectic sometimes if you're healing, everybody's getting hit with damage and you're trying to heal this person and that person, you're watching out for this dude, you're trying to cleanse that effect off of that character, you know what I mean? But you also have to watch out and move and dodge certain abilities that monsters will have and enemies will have and things like that. But if you don't dodge, you go down, there's no one to bring you back up because you're the healer, and there's no one to heal you because you're the healer. And if you go down, then generally, again, the rest of the party is going to go down unless, it's close to the end of that encounter, whatever it may be. They might, the rest of the party might be able to eke out enough damage to take the monsters down and wait for you to respawn and come back. So healing is a little less stressful, especially if you're good at micromanaging, like we said. If you're good at lists and you're good at numbers and you're good at knowing when to do what, and you like keeping up with that kind of stuff, which I personally do not like healing a lot. Then definitely it's not nearly as stressful, I find, as tanking. And then DPS is probably the least stressful, except on the end of performance. You really are really held to a high accountability, can be anyway, simply because you really only have one thing that you really have to worry about doing, and that's doing as much damage as you can. But other than that, if you don't have to, as far as being a DPS, you don't have to be the best of the best all the time. You can do decent, and your party will still clear content and things like that. So it's not like you have to be perfect, you know what I mean? But you do want to do, you do want to have a general idea, of what you're doing. But that's really about it, all you have to do. And then support classes can be kind of stressful just because you are expected generally to do certain things. And if you don't do certain things, then, people can get upset and things like that. Or fights can take longer. Though both DPS and support aren't necessarily necessary, you know what I mean? Like if you go in with a tank and a healer, so long as there's no real time limit, you can get stuff done, but it's just gonna take forever. So having deeps is important. It's not going to take as long, and you can get through content at a decent pace. But if you throw in a support character who's giving people beneficial effects, it can even go a little bit faster. So don't think that if you roll a DPS class, or deeps as we call them, or if you roll support, you're not going to be no. People are going to want you in their party for sure. You know what I mean? They're definitely going to be looking for tanks. Everybody's always looking for tanks and generally looking for healers. But as far as you know, what's good to play as far as what's needed, tanks probably are the most needed class, simply because not a lot of people generally play tanks. There's generally tons of DPS. People play tons of DPS. Everybody likes DPS. Currently, we are DPS. We're pugilists. We punch stuff. You know, that's what we do. And then there's usually a decent amount of healers. And support class, I guess, could be touch and go, kind of. I know in Final Fantasy XIV there's plenty of bards. You can always find a bard. You can always find a machinist. But that's really about it as far as classes and characters and races and roles. So just to briefly go over, you know, a little bit. It doesn't really matter what race you choose. You know, choose whatever race you want. If you want to just play the game, have fun. Just don't worry about it. If you want to optimize, then you're gonna want to look into stuff. And then classes, you know, once you figure out what role each class is and you figure out what role you want to play, pick the class that you think is cool. You know, it doesn't really matter. Each class, no matter what, is going to have the tools it needs to do the job that it can do. And generally, they're going to be on point with every other class in that role. So, and then, you know, you have tanks, DPS, healers, and maybe support team, you know. But that's really about it, and that's a lot of what MMORPGs focus on and revolve around is roles, doing your role, playing your role well, and knowing your class. So there's, and also don't be, you know, don't be discouraged. The game wants you to know how to play. You know, the developers want you to know how to play, so they're going to give you the tools and information that you need and the tool tips that you need in order to play your class well. You know, you're going to have, there's a lot of reading generally in MMORPGs, but they're going to give you those tools so you can definitely figure it out. And if you can't, there's going to be tons of information online, videos, and I mean, we're going to be doing videos on how to play each class. We're going to be doing videos on how to play each role. I mean, you're going to be able, and there's going to be Reddit posts and forum posts and all kinds of things. Hey, you know, I don't know what I should be doing for my monk rotation right now. You know what I mean? Boom, Google monk rotation of Final Fantasy XIV. Bam, and you'll have that rotation right there. And you're going to have different people are going to have different rotations, and you can just pick one and just go, okay, we're going to work on this, and then kind of feel it out, and then like see, well, okay, this is cool, but I wonder what happens if I do this, you know, after that, you know what I mean, stuff like that, you know. So so don't be discouraged. It's really not that bad. It sounds like a lot, and it is. It's a lot to learn, but it's not a lot to retain. It's actually fairly easy to retain and reproduce rotations and things like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. That's really all we've got for right now. Our next episode, we are going to talk, since we went decently in depth here on roles, we're not going to talk about that next. Our next episode, we're going to talk about moving around in the game world and things like that, and that'll be our next episode. Just some real basic controls and things like that. What you're going to be doing in MMORPGs. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you have any comments or questions, concerns, if you have anything that you want me to go over or talk about, or anything like that, anything you want to hear about, just leave them in the comments for sure on YouTube, on the YouTube page, or on the video page, or you can send us an email at ffxivandthings or ffxivandthingsmailbag@gmail. Or mailbox, I'm sorry, ffxivandthingsmailbox@gmail.com. Sorry, I literally just set that up. But just send us an email, shoot us an email, and that's really about it. All right, guys, you guys enjoy. Say goodbye, Sig. Bye, Sig.